WDXE News, on the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
That's us. It's, what is it, 8:09, and it is time for the Rent Right and First Class Charter Hour. Bill Adams is in the house. Bill, how are you, buddy?
Doing great, Mr. Jeff.
Yeah, it's your show, buddy. It's your show.
No, it's all about you.
What's going on at Rent Right and First Class Charter these days? I was looking at your website. You got a good website.
We've got two great websites, and Rent Right Incorporated. A lot of information on that particular website. We're putting on some YouTube videos and how-tos and equipment pictures and info there for those folks that need to get jobs done. Anything from mini X's to floor sanding, we've got it. We can cover you.
Awesome. I did. You got a tremendous amount of equipment there for the guy that, or even companies that need equipment, need to do something. You can supply the needed machinery and equipment to make it happen.
We can do it. Sure do. Sell a great brand of zero-turn mowers and Hustler, and also for the steering wheel. We still have a group of folks that like the steering wheel on mowers, right?
Yeah.
And we sell the Troy-built mowers and push mowers. I've also got battery-powered push mowers, which are very popular right now. And no gasoline, Jeff. You don't have to put gas in them.
You know, people may not think of this, but, the holidays are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And for the guys in your family,
Mm-hmm.
Rent Right has some wonderful ideas for gift giving to dad or husband, son, daughter.
Oh, yeah.
Those guy gifts are there for
Yeah,
you.
the guy gifts. Crest Tools. It's fabulous handheld outdoor power equipment. Also DeWalt. We've got them right there in the showroom. Just come by and check it out.
Not to mention pocket knives.
Pocket knives, and we've got a special young lady in charge of that.
That's right.
And so I call her Mayday, and so
that's good.
And so she does a great job for us.
That's great. That's great. And you, of course, First Class Charter is got those buses running all over the country.
Mm-hmm. We did. We just finished up a big month hauling military.
Yeah.
A lot of training going on to the south and to the north, and we're privileged to be able to haul troops to training camps and delivering them to airports, and so that's a big month for that. Sports picks up in August, and you'll see us everywhere from Tennessee Tech to Nashville.
Well, this hour, of course, is sponsored by Rent Right and First Class Charter. Bill Adams, Miss Jimmy Ann, you guys have a great business over there, great folks to do business with. And your show today, you have a guest. Who's your guest?
We have a young man today that's been here before, but I'm just amazed how he can string words together. So Edgar Bozant and is become a good friend and from a different generation than us, Jeff.
He is.
And so that's one of the topics that I want to talk about today is just generations and communication. And we talk about that a lot and how generations need to connect.
Yeah.
And so Edgar can string words together and read my mind, so I'm going to let him speak today, if that's okay.
Pull the mic up just a little closer to you, Edgar. Of course, you've got a strong voice anyway. But
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you know what it made me think of, Edgar? I want to think about this just a second. In generations past, before we had the advancement in technologies that we have today, families were more together, I guess, than they are today. We have so many areas where we're separated now. And there's, and of course, I have young kids still at home, which is unusual for somebody our age. But anyway, there's a lot of distractions, that separate us from actually talking and communicating. Mm-hmm. And so they do a lot of communicating that I'm kind of lost in, and vice versa. They don't understand me sometimes. I don't understand them sometimes. Mm-hmm. So that may be where we're talking about somewhat today. Just made me think that in years past, people kind of knew their grandparents, even their great-grandparents, and had spent time with them.
Yeah.
So there was generational, I guess, meshing that we're missing today.
Yeah, it is. And, one of the things Edgar and I were talking about yesterday was talk about ministry. We've been going through on Tuesdays talking about church history for the last few weeks. And one of the things Edgar and I were talking about was the ministry style and communicating with different generations. Edgar's age, in his very early 30s, and then also with 60 and 70-year-olds, right? And there's communication gaps oftentimes. And how do we bridge those, and how do we protect wisdom and knowledge that has been handed down? And so I think it should be a good topic today.
Yeah, can you solve this for us?
Solving, maybe not, but identifying at least some key areas to work on. Hopefully so. I think you actually opened it up perfectly with the idea that technology and the advancement of technology has disproportionately separated each of these generations on communication. And you actually have fragmented communication amongst the ones that are of this current generation, Gen Z, and even the upcoming one after that. But if we look back to the early 2000s, right? Mm-hmm. I remember I was in middle school. I was in elementary school first, but at middle school, they came out with the Razor flip phone. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was probably the greatest technological advancement of the time.
One of my favorite phones I ever had.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
If you lived in that time, you knew what the Razor phone was. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And what we see is that technology in that time for teens and preteens, it brought more people together at the start. What happens is when you get smartphones that come into the 2010s and on, what ends up happening is that you have this, it's no longer something that you pick up and put down, but it's something that you feel like you always have got in your hand. It's open access all the time. And so we've shifted in communication, and in large parts, we've shifted in how we parented, we've shifted in how kids grow. And that development impacts how we communicate with one another. And I think 2020 really blew a lot of people out of the water with communication because I brought in some statistics because these statistics are just absolutely mind-boggling. But this is a shift from play-based childhoods to phone-based childhoods. If that's a good picture to hold on to there for a moment.
Yeah. You go back to our childhood, and I don't want to replay too much about ancient history.
Yeah.
But you go back to the stories I heard was pre-school system.
Yes.
Okay, where churches educated kids.
Yes.
And how things began to change, and the war years, and Dad was off at war, and there was a need for more workers, so Mama went to the factories, and she was making bombs for the war, and also the textile mills that we had a lot of here.
Right.
And then we had a fantastic idea. Hey, while Mama's at the mill, the state will educate your children, and so here comes the education programs, and also the busing programs. So it's compounded over the years, and so here we are today with dealing with how we transfer information, and also communication. And then inside of that, Jeff, is something we've been talking about on Tuesdays a good bit, is what is truth? We have that embedded in all this, and so it's very interesting to hear from a younger generation of where we are and also where we're going.
Absolutely. I think to paint a picture, I love to read some of these statistics, but not out of the joy of the results. Findings of the U.S. National Survey on Drug Use and Health. The data reveals a staggering 145% increase in depressive episodes amongst girls since 2012. For boys, 161% increase since 2012. This impact extends not also into colleges, and with college students, 134% increase in anxiety, 106% increase in depression, 72% increase in ADHD, 57% increase in bipolar disorder, and all this is since just 2012. And so I can't help but think ever since that time, where you have the school system come in, is that it's been a constant attack on the nucleus of the unity of the family. And that I look at today's age, And there are so many parents, and I'm sure every parent's had this in their own generation, but it's how do I raise my kids in the chaos of what has unilaterally swept over the United States and the world, and it's this technological boom where people can communicate faster than ever but say nothing at all. And we have no ability to have interpersonal social skills. Like, those are going out the window.
Do you find that, and I think this, Daniel and I were, and I mentioned this earlier when I was talking to Mr. Box here earlier in the show, before you guys got here, I was talking about a conversation I had with Daniel, my 13-year-old, just yesterday. And of course, he is gathering information from those sources that you're talking about. You know, we're carrying a tremendous access to almost anything in the world, information-wise, in our hands. Okay, so when we want to know something, instead of turning to Grandpa or Uncle or Dad, we Google it, and so the discernment of is that really right or is that really wrong? Or and there's so much information without the added benefit of maturity and wisdom that comes with age. Does that make sense?
That should come with
Absolutely.
They're dumped with maybe even accurate information, but they're not mentally developed enough to handle it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Isn't how we gather information so important in how we process information? So a good example is we can read these things, but I like to, and several solid books and studies will show that the three areas that we grow as children in are free play, attunement, and social learning.
Let's talk about the first one. I love that. Talk about free play.
With free play, children learn. We learn to cooperate with each other. We used to play together.
Out. Free play.
Yeah.
Free play.
That's a term that's generational.
Yeah, I call it playground.
There we go.
I don't know what in the world he's talking about. What's free play?
Talk to us.
Right. Free play is the idea that kids, when you were children, you would be hanging out with one another. You would be doing, say it in life, but no, you would hang out and you would be going to all these places together, processing life together. You would play.
So we just go play.
Go play.
That's when the parents sent you outside and told you not to come back in until they told you.
That's absolutely. Hey, look, that's correct. But often, doesn't the mind die when it just sits alone inside, without people around? And kids and children desperately need to be amongst one another because they develop in harmony. Did you know that the human child has the longest childhood period of any mammal on the earth?
No.
And I think I designed it specifically for that, because there's so much development that happens, especially between 0 to 5. And what I believe the world has done effectively, and it's not just Gen Z, but let's take my generation for an example. I know a lot of parents, and I'm guilty at times, that when I get home, I kind of just want to scroll for a few minutes and go on empty brain mode. I call it the potato chip hours. When you eat it, but it does nothing for you except satisfy you. It didn't ever give you anything good. But your kids what do your kids see, right? We emulate what our kids see, and I believe our parents we're very big on talking to our kids about staying away from sketchy cars and sex predators, but are we as vocal about being careful about how we navigate a world of social media in which a lot of young teens now and kids, and there are kids now who have smartphones by the age of 6.
Yeah.
And I believe that's actually quite damaging, because if we don't have the full reins as parents, that's such an easy way the enemy has backdoor access.
Let me just make an observation. I told, of course, a lot of you that know that listen, I have a brand new grandbaby. He just turned 1 year old.
He's so cute.
He's a beautiful little boy. But let me tell you what he's already knows. He already knows if he has one of these, that he sees us enough with them, these phones. If I handed him this phone at 1, he puts it up here and starts jabbering, and he pokes on it like this. he's already seen it enough to know that there's something there that it's crazy. It's totally crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I love the term free play, and I'm gonna add to that term free play. Thank you, Edgar.
Yes, sir.
Is for that term is I think there's such a need for unsupervised out in the backyard playing with cousins.
Yes.
In
Yeah.
the neighborhoods. Okay.
I agree.
All right. Let me throw this also out. Yeah, and I'm a sports guy. I've always been a sports guy.
Yeah.
But I believe there's a time, and it needs to be a set time where we have unstructured play. I think a lot of our recreation is so structured. The game is at 6, and I get my uniform, and it's adult driven. It's not kid driven.
Right.
And so, Edgar, speak to that.
Absolutely. Well, isn't a lot of what kids go through right now, especially in the social media world, what kids experience is what they would call matriculation and growing up, and from preteen on and puberty, is the idea that a lot of it is facilitated by experts driving social media content like notifications. The average is 11 notifications an hour to a kid, and it's pumping them with this adrenaline kind of juice. And I can't tell you how antsy I see kids get when they're bored. And the idea of free play is that when you're bored, creativity and imagination is supposed to step in, and then that's where you get those fun adventures you remember as kids, because there's and we serve a God of creativity, and in creativity and community. As a kid, you remember all the great adventures that you would have out and about wherever you were doing. But
and I don't want to sound negative, okay?
Yeah.
But I agree with Bill. The idea of getting the kids out, playing with their cousins, playing with a group, and get them out there and just let them play what they want to play. But one or two of them will have a cell phone, and then it all dives into what's on the cell phone.
We may need to leave it in the house.
And so and again, I don't want to sound negative, but we're losing the benefit of what you're talking about if they take the phones with them and they're
Sure. The thing that I see in the workplace today, and this has happened over, we've been over there for 46, 47 years now, but I've seen the decline in the ability to critically think.
Yes.
And I think that begins in the backyard, Jeff, just like what you and Daniel are doing, rebuilding that UTV.
Yeah.
It's being able to figure it out and work it out. I heard that term for years from my dad, my granddad.
Yeah, work it out.
Work it out. So we have the normal worker today is they want to be told what to do, complete the task, and get paid and go home. There's no critical thinking. They don't want to be creative, as you were speaking to, Edgar. And speak to that, if you would.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to creativity and imagination, we don't wrestle with enough time of being bored anymore. I can't tell you how antsy I see teens get, or young adults get, when the phone is off, everything is off. It's like there's an itch. Because when you unplug from the system that's always going, it creates the same kind of emotion that somebody would get if they are having withdrawal symptoms. If you don't believe me, take your phone from your child for a few days and you will see it. And this is the danger that is presented, and why parents have to double down on making sure that we have parameters in place. I mean, even time, I would even say time restrictions on it, because it's too pervasive.
And we're talking about children mainly, and
we can
but hey, we're tied to it too.
You are.
Hey, look.
We're tied to it too.
I see a lot of it.
It's very
senior
difficult,
adults.
I there's been times when I've left out of the office to sit down there and get out of the parking lot and go, oh my gosh, I forgot my phone. And it's like, I ain't got air. I got to go back.
Can't breathe.
Well, look, I actually encourage parents more so not not to forsake a phone, but we have to recapture the purpose of a tool rather than the tool using us. Because
Yeah, I agree with
I
that.
think it's hard to see whom serving whom in this field. But technology is a wonderful thing. It's a great thing. No one's going to complain that the fact that we can do so much at our fingertips. But I'm also so impressed by the Amish and how I talked with my wife as we were coming back from the Amish auction in Etheridge. I'm like, Ariane, this man is on the back of a horse and buggy right now. It's probably going to take him I don't know how many miles to the gallon this horse gets, but how long is it taking to get to Walmart from Etheridge?
We could call Lanny. He's an expert on the horse.
We can.
Yeah.
Oh, can he give us accurate
You ought
distance?
to call him.
Yeah, Lanny could tell us about how the horse, Amish horse working.
Yeah,
do.
we need to holler at
Dude,
him.
I would be actually very interested. And I'm impressed because I'm like, wait, one trip to the grocery store is probably 2 to 3 hours, maybe,
if not more.
if not more. And yet, I have been so blown out of the water by how much they accomplish.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, wow, we can get somewhere within a few moments, in a few minutes. And yet I feel as if because sometimes we're running in so many circles in too many worlds and in too many distractions, we miss out on the opportunity to capitalize on the time that we've been given. And so we waste, honestly, a lot of time. And
I'm really good at it.
yeah. Hey, Billy Graham said that in the stadium. A whole sermon he talked about was time is short, and he talked about how up until the maybe 18 or 1930s, before the car, the fastest mode of transportation for centuries was a horse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that didn't
Absolutely.
change.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
and as fast as we have come from the first plane to now and everything, as much technology as we have, we are not moving as fast as a family or as the people of God. And then it seems like we sometimes almost get drowned out by our own ability to dive into a world that we don't fully understand.
So I've got a question for you, Edgar.
All right.
You're more in tune than Jeff and I are. Where to from here? You and I have been talking about AI, and
Yeah.
Edgar's teaching me some AI, artificial intelligence writing, and but as the next generation, where to?
Absolutely. There has to be a return. I even like to even take a little turn on the word you use. I even say attunement, and that's one of those words that kids miss out on, and that's the idea of processing emotion and processing things through interaction. So think of it like what we would used to have as mentorship. It wasn't a second thought back in the day that an older man would take a younger man into his craft and teach him everything that he knows. But I believe at some point we kind of started to shift away from the intentional mentorship of individuals. And I think in that moment we also shifted away from the opportunity to really impact kids. And so when you got a world like AI, I think one of the biggest issues, and I know we had talked about this yesterday, is the idea of free thought versus program thought and how much of it is actually authentic, right? Because what is the purpose of AI? And I think we often look at it as the idea that, oh, wow, it's this, kind of the Matrix type deal. It's going to take over in a few years. And in reality, it's not something that will do the work for you, but it's a tool that can help capitalize time and fill in the gap of the time you save with intentionality. It has incredible ability to process and deliver suggestible outcomes based off your business data or your communication data, and you see it being able to now emulate voices, which that's a very scary thing.
It is.
And there's a lot of people that are getting scammed by
yeah.
that, because you can take AI and you can actually, if they listen to this long enough, they could probably take our voice and
I don't know, man.
recreate it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, look, and once again, that's where this scary world comes in. And so imagine a world where you have this kind of capability, and if you don't have human interaction, and that's what has to steer the helm of everything moving forward, is we have to come back to the idea of mentorship, to the idea of human interaction, to the idea that people have to pour into each other for us to grow. more so than technology is pouring into us. It still has to be people driven. We have to be people driven. Because if most of how I grow is through this phone, then it doesn't matter how much I know if I can't communicate with the person next to me. What does it say? You could be the smartest man in the room, but if you can't speak what's in your brain, might as well be silent.
It's just the opposite with me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just want to say it, and I just can't get it out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, what was that kind of joke that says everybody, we all thought he was crazy. Then he opened his mouth and proved it.
He proved it.
Yeah,
Yes.
however that goes.
Yeah, that's true. So I was looking here, Edgar, on the names. I'm curious of how these generations, how they got their names. Generation Alpha, Generation Z,
Yeah.
Millennials.
Hey, we may have somebody that wants to help us here.
All right.
Oh, perfect.
Hey, good morning. How are you, buddy?
Jeff, I couldn't get to the phone a while ago when y'all was talking about the horse mileage.
Yes.
Yes.
A horse, most Amish live about 12 miles from
Whoop. Did we lose you?
24 miles,
We're losing you.
2 blocks. Hey, you hear me?
Yeah, I'm trying again.
Okay, they live about 12 miles from town, most of them. And their horses get about a gallon of oats and 2 blocks of hay to town and back. Thank you.
Thank you,
I thought
man.
y'all
Triple
needed to
H
know
horse
that.
hockey.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you. I knew he'd help.
Oh, wow.
I knew
That's
he would
great.
help. So now
Thank
you
you,
know,
Lanny.
Edgar.
What was it, 1 gallon of
Listen,
oats and...
all you got to do is come here and we can find answers for you.
Absolutely. Honestly, he just made my day. I have such a big smile. I'm going to take that with me into the future. Thank you.
What did he say? Two buckets of oats and a bale of hay.
Yeah. Or maybe it was either 1 bucket of oats, 2 bales of hay, or 2
Something
bales
like
of hay, 1 bucket
one,
of oats.
one or the other.
Absolutely.
It's fabulous.
That was awesome.
All right.
So which generation would Lanny fall into?
Lanny is probably near the greatest, or coming into the baby boomers.
Yeah. Yeah. So the boomers were 1946 to 1964. So I guess that's me. I'm right in the middle of it. Yeah. I was born in 58. So
Boomers. You were at that time, honestly, where the best cars were ever made.
yeah, there's some cool
I'll
ones.
be honest.
Oh, yeah.
I give me either something from the 50s or give me something from Elon Musk. One of the two. Or a truck.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Silent generation, that would have been the 20s through the 40s. Greatest generation, 1901 to 24. And then the lost generation was World War I and the Great Depression. So,
You know, they have another name for millennials, too. So you got Generation X, Y, and Z, and we call them millennials. I remember growing up it being called Generation Y because it was it was the generation that started asking the question why when their parents had asked them to do something. Because before that one, apparently that was an obtuse thought, right? Because I actually think that y'all actually would be in the same boat as my parents. And so what my parents would tell me is that if my grandparents asked them to do something, it wasn't negotiations. There was no negotiable
no.
moments. It was do it.
It was because I said.
It was because I said it.
Yeah.
And I think that was the same in the workforce as well, right? I think that same mentality continue. And isn't that a beautiful picture of what we build at home plays out in the world? So that really was the mentality of a lot of people, at least in America at the time. And so what we're producing and what we're instilling in our children at home is what is going to define the generation that takes the lead.
One of the questions
to come.
that I think is healthy from the current generation, which would be Alpha, Generation Alpha. Is that the ones coming along now from 10 to 25?
Is that the newest
I
generation
guess,
is Alpha?
That would be, I think those would be my children.
That it's your kids or the generation before that is and I've learned to accept it is when they say why. They ask why, and because of how we were raised, when I hear the question why, my natural response is because I said.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I am learning, Jeff, to really appreciate the question of explain to me why. Okay.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about this in ministry styles, sharing the gospel in the delivery of how we do that. And I just believe it's healthy for old guys like us to be able to embrace that question of why, you know?
Absolutely. That's hitting the nail right on the head. Kids, and I would say even parents, like young parents right now, there's such an I would honestly, I'm going to look at this from a lens of Scripture and say that the majority of the issues that we see in these generations is identity issues. And where is their identity? And that the parents of these kids are the ones, the early cracklings of the why. And I think there was some breakdown in which the question of why seemed like rebellious questions, and in some cases was. I think if we looked at a grand scope, the why was, why am I doing this? What is the purpose in this? Like, who am I? Like, and I think sometimes we get more involved, and I think, I can't help but almost state it as fact that when we put too much time into, and hear me out, I know parents that have kids that are in a wheelhouse 24/7 of sports travel, of doing everything. And a lot of these kids are doing this because they see the joy in their parents' eyes. But to be accepted. And it's like they want acceptance. And I'm like, well, my goodness, which one is going to have the prevalent outcome of your child? Is it going to be the baseball games that that your child attends, and these are good things? But I think oftentimes, at least in the South, what we end up doing is we accidentally or intentionally, we will claim Christ, that we know Jesus, but often we don't declare him as Lord. And I think we very knowingly say, if Jesus is Lord of my life, but I'm going to make him number 3 in my life. And especially in the discipleship of kids, I think that's where we kind of get mixed up. Parents want transformation in their children, but we're not doing it according to what God calls us to do with our children, and hoping that it just naturally happens by just bringing them to church.
You know, that's one thing that I've thought about a lot, Jeff, is we're so driven to accomplish, you know, our generation, accomplish it, buy that house, you know, start that business. One of the things that I hear a lot right now in our age is reaching that retirement age. Okay, so now what do we do? And then it goes back to what Edgar had just said, our identity. When we identify with maybe our job or our sport, okay, or our position, when we step back from those things, really, who are we?
Yeah.
Okay, and when you're not in your profession anymore, you're not in your business suit, who are you?
Yeah.
Okay. And that is a question that I believe that every person needs to deal with.
Interesting.
Is identity. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be profound if your grandchildren looked at you and said, instead of, I mean, their first identifying mark, some kids will be like, yeah, my granddad's a great fisherman, or my granddad's a great woodsman and mechanic. These are all great skills. But my goodness, what happens when I find that one kid that says, man, my grandpa loves Jesus?
Yeah.
I like that's just the first thing he thinks of when he thinks of his grandpa, or he thinks of his grandma. Like, oh my goodness, they love Jesus, or they love the Lord, or they're like, they know who they are.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think that will speak volumes. And you ask what is needed. I'm like, one of the greatest breakdowns is between grandparents and grandchildren right now. Because so many are getting swept up into this, and this is a hard statistic. In 2020, you have it maybe, and if you're listening online, and I might get this statistic wrong, feel free to call in and correct me, but 3 to 4% in 2020 of teens would identify in the LGBTQ space. In 2020, it rapidly boosted up to about 15 to 20%. of teens.
Do you not think that was just as much for attention and fad-like as anything?
I think sometimes when we pretend a fad, right, a facade is, if you live in a fad or facade long enough, the reality and truth begins to distort, and you forget what is real and you forget what is true. And so I would agree with you that it hopped a lot on the train. A lot of people went on that train, and I think a lot of people got lost on that train, regardless of whether they truly felt that inclination or not. And when the devil has the ability, and the world has the ability to make sex malleable. Every great civilization, that is the final mark before that civilization has fallen. Sodom and Gomorrah, the Romans, the Greeks, the Mongolians. You see it, and every time right before they've met their untimely end has been when the idea of sexual identity has become completely distorted in society.
Well, is that not behind all that? Is that not just the destruction of the family, the traditional family?
Absolutely. And I think that's the goal of the world, is to destroy what God had called to be holy and what God had called and created in Genesis between a man and a woman to populate. Like, his desire is the family unit. His desire is to see biblical marriage. And hear me out, this may be a reflection on multiple generations here, but perhaps we treated marriage far too lightly and how we handle it. And we have a generation now of kids that have they don't see the purpose of marriage because they never saw marriage work.
Right.
And unfortunately, I think the statistic of divorces is higher in the church than it is just in general.
It is.
It's a pretty big snowball right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite, and it's like we have to radically pursue what healthy relationships look like, so that kids can see a picture of what God intended for marriage to be, and at the center. I often say, kids don't see Jesus on the way to church on a Sunday morning, and everyone's fighting in the car. And maybe you've been there, but I know I've been there. And we get to church. All right, everybody. This fight's about to end right now. When we get out this car, everyone's going to have a smile on their face. There's going to be some serious whoopings later. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No other questions about it. And I remember those kind of funny, but maybe I'm the only one. But in reality,
you're the only one.
Yeah, there we go. I may be the only one. But in reality, I'm like, you want kids to see a healthy picture of Jesus and a healthy picture of God. Let them see a healthy picture of marriage. And
well,
I think
opens up a whole can of worms, doesn't it?
It sure does.
What's a healthy marriage?
Oh, wow. Wow.
Is a healthy marriage that you never have a crossword? I doubt it.
No.
I doubt it.
I do something with my children that I like to be superhero dad.
To me, I just want to say this.
Yes, sir.
Every time I go to the grocery store and go down the cleaning aisle, I see you.
Is that right?
Yeah, Mr. Clean.
Oh my gosh. Man, I was.
So now you're Mr. Clean.
Oh man,
if you want to be a superhero, I'm just saying.
Thank you. Ever since I shaved my
Clorox,
mustache and beard, the whole dynamic changed on my face. I look like a different human being.
You do. And I can say that to you because you're a friend.
Absolutely. No, I take it. I enjoy it. What was I saying?
You want to be a superhero.
Oh yeah, the superhero dad. Yeah. And the reality is, thank you. And the reality is that, what's that great line? I love movies, and from the second Batman, Christopher Nolan's, you either die the hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I think in reality, if we try to paint a picture of us as this immovable rock, that over time our kids will eventually see the reality of what that is, and then it's just a person, a sinful man. So I'd rather have a picture of painting a repentant man in my children's lives as opposed to a superhero dad, a repentant dad, because if I have crossed words with my wife, I want my kids to see what reconciliation looks like on the surface. So I don't think it's the absence of conflict. We just have to have more of the presence of the gospel in our marriage. And so it's not hiding. It's letting our kids see not only the brokenness, but letting our kids see the one who puts it back together and how that happens. And I think that's...
Bill, I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because you and I are closer to the same age than me and this young man.
Okay.
But we're talking about our families and married life, bringing up children, that kind of thing. You ever lost your cool?
This morning.
This morning.
You know, it was after 7.
Did you spring, like pop a bolt or something?
Probably broke a spring.
Broke a spring?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I say that because I have. And the hardest thing I think for a guy sometimes is to admit when he's wrong. Mm-hmm. That's a hard thing. But I think when you are wrong and you realize that you are wrong, and I think maybe this might have been the point you were making about making reconciliation, is to let your kids know, okay, Dad didn't make a mistake. Here's what Dad should have done, or whatever. Rather than saying it doesn't matter that I'm wrong, you're still going to do what I say, blah blah blah. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. I use a. First of all, I got a couple thoughts. One, our God wired up men to be authoritative.
Yes, he did.
Okay, the structure from heaven that was designed and displayed in the Garden of Eden forward. He's wired us up for that authoritative role, and in first of all in the family. So we've got that to deal with in our nature. Okay, then we deal with fallen man, which is sin, and so but we still have that structure in place. And I think oftentimes on the sin side, we fall into the trap of pride, and and then we don't want to back down from the pride, and we don't want to appear weak to our women and in our workplace and so forth. So there's a balance. But Scripture reminds us, Jeff, when you study 1 Timothy and also Titus, we've been talking about,
right,
is that Paul uses the word manage his household well, and you look at the word manage, okay, and there's other terms and charges for not just an elder or a pastor, but also dad. Yeah. And when we look at that, examine that closely, but specifically this morning, when we look at the word manage, okay, that does not, oftentimes we think that has the connotation of being perfect. It's not. It's dealing with, Edgar, it's dealing with the wrong that comes your way.
Yeah.
When I wrong my wife or say something smart or to my kids, we manage well, we balance well. And falling into that is being able to apologize and show your kids reconciliation and restoration in those times of
absolutely
good point
of
really good.
Falling. So we got to remember that. And I think one of the terms that I learned from my dad, he would say when there's a tight situation or something going on that was just a little bit discretionary,
yes.
You don't have, he would use the term, you might ought to cut him some slack.
Yeah.
And just let it play out, And I have found if you do that, keep your mouth shut, it'll usually work its way out. But I have a hard time keeping my choppers shut sometimes.
We tend to be reactionary.
Very, yeah.
And there's a difference in reacting and responding.
Yeah. So is this a generational thing?
Well, I'll say reacting and responding is like,
Let's see someone else. Hey, good morning. How are you?
Jeff,
Yes.
I want to say I'll be 81 later on this month. I wished I had heard this program 60 years ago when my kids were small.
How about that?
I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I learned some stuff I think an old man can still learn.
Oh, you got that right. and you ain't that old, buddy.
Well, hey, that's a great show this morning.
Hey, well, thank you, Lane.
Tell Bill I really appreciate him bringing this to us.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
All right, bye-bye.
Very good. That's good. That's good to hear. That's really good to hear.
That's incredibly encouraging.
Good to hear.
The difference between reaction and respond is how often do we let our emotions lead us as opposed to our emotions guiding us. And I find the biggest moments I've made mistakes as a person, as a father, and as a husband is when I allow my emotions to do the talking for me because I've gotten crossed real fast, as opposed to allowing my emotions to guide me into my response, because they don't need to take the helm, and it's not that they're not important either. Men don't need to bottle everything down and don't feel, they'll implode over time.
Yeah.
But that we allow it to guide. And
Yeah.
I mean, could it be that we're in this crazy social deconstruction era of 2024 because of the lack of biblical men?
I'll give you a quick example of something happens with my son. And my reaction is, have you lost your ever loving mind? Okay, that's a reaction. A response would be, son, what were you thinking?
I hate to say
There's a whole big difference.
I know, but I like the first one.
Oh, listen, the first one's all natural.
Natural. Yeah.
No refinement required.
Well, I believe, Jeff. I think a lot of it with children and probably with adults too is that free play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, oftentimes we think we live in a world today that's a call to laziness. It's not. Edgar shared with me that he ended up at Crockett Falls yesterday.
Yeah.
Hanging out, and everybody needs some release time away from the cell phone. And kids, ladies and gentlemen, need to have free time in the backyard, being kids. Just let them be rough.
Yeah.
So I think that eliminates not all of the issues, but
a large predominant one.
Yeah.
I'd like to find it. I just heard a glimpse of a study that was done about boys. And of course, we grew up with some of this. The roughhousing, what we call roughhousing.
Yeah.
You had a rough group around you.
Beating and banging and, slamming and falling and hitting each other and running into each other. It's been proven in some study that was actually greatly beneficial to a young boy.
Absolutely.
The roughhousing that they want to do is beneficial to them. And listen, even my little 1-year-old, when I roughhouse him, he loves it.
Yeah.
You know, there's something about boys that like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but they do.
I think it's just a natural, innate. I think that's one of the unique things God gives men is it's an aggression and a protection as well.
Yeah. But if you're never allowed to do that, and that's bottled up.
Yeah.
I think it harms your development.
Yeah, it does, especially with men, and I see it with girls. A great way, and we've talked about this a lot, is barn life. That's one thing I love about Lawrence County, is we have so many people that are raised around farms or small acreage with animals, with sheep or horses or cattle, and
we used to wrestle at recess. I'm talking about
wrestle at recess.
Sure enough, full blown, get down in the dust.
Oh yeah,
wrestle big time.
Yeah,
I think there's such a fragility these days that if somebody, I don't know who I was talking with the other day, but someone said, watch T-ball come up and one kid accidentally falls in the dirt and the mom is just running out, oh baby, and it's just like. It's okay. It's okay to get some scrapes and bruises, and it's not me. And hear me out. Don't hear me like I'm not. I'm not looking to get on anybody, but I absolutely believe you're correct.
Yeah.
It's
as much as we could talk for another hour, we're running out of time. We're running out of time, and again, I want to remind everybody that the hour has been brought to you by our good friends at Rent Right, Bill and Jimmy Ann Adams at Rent Right, and all the crew there, and of course First Class Charter. You guys are a great part of the community here.
Absolutely.
And sponsor this hour, and we'll do it again next Tuesday, won't we, Bill?
we sure hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to have I don't know who we may have next week.
Right.
Edgar, did he pay you for coming? I'm just kidding.
And this is having these conversations is rich enough for
Isn't
me.
it good?
Yes.
Isn't it good? I think a lot of what we've done here at the station to have these hour-long programs and have these conversations, I think is really good. We've had lots of different guests and people come on. It's been a fun time. Tomorrow, let's see. I've got somebody coming tomorrow. I forget who's coming. I'll have to look and see. I know. I'll tell you later. I got to make sure he's coming before I announce it. I told him I would call him and remind him I hadn't done that yet, but I want to make sure that he's going to come. Anyway, we'll do that. It is, we got a few more seconds to go. Edgar Bozant. Edgar is minister of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ and currently speaking as guest at different spots. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you want to get in touch with Edgar, get in touch with Bill.
That's a great way to go.
Yeah.
I want to set you up for that.
Or me.
Don't you
get in touch with me. I can get in touch with you. I know. I got you. And by the way, I mentioned, too, that you're close enough for me to tell that Edgar's going to be joining my office as a realtor.
Yes.
Yeah, at Keller
Absolutely
Williams.
looking forward
so
to
I'm
it.
looking forward to Edgar being a part of the team there at the Keller Williams office. So that's pretty cool.
Blessed to have the opportunity.
Pretty cool. You know what I didn't do? I didn't do this right here. I got to do something. Where is it? Where's my button? Go. I'm going to mess up. I've messed up the timing of this thing. Hold on just a second.
Israel, the U.S. has been...
I don't know why it's doing that. Anyway, there we go. We got to get out of here.
Okay.
Thank you,
It's
Bill.
9 o'clock.
Thank you,
It's
Jeff.
all on me. I messed up the buttons. You guys have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right.
And that is one of deterrence.
Former President Trump says if he was still in office,
The Israeli attack would have never happened. Russia would never have attacked Ukraine, and we'd have no inflation.